that we never discuss or we rarely discuss is the value and importance of human connection. Relationships. James Comer says that no significant learning can occur without a significant relationship. George Washington Carver says all learning is understanding relationships. Everyone in this room has been affected by a teacher or an adult. For years, I have watched people teach. I have looked at the best and I've looked at some of the worst. A colleague said to me one time, they don't pay me to like the kids. They pay me to teach a lesson. The kids should learn it. I should teach it. They should learn it. Case closed. Well, I said to her, you know, kids don't learn from people they don't like.
Okay, so what we can take away from this is that technically we can be a perfect teacher, but if we aren't able to form positive relationships with students, then we're not going to be very effective. And as teachers, we have to care about relationship building with students because it's so closely tied to student achievement. For many of our students, especially those who struggle and those who are normally disenfranchised by school, building relationships is essential. So we're going to spend the next hour thinking about how we build relationships with our students and looking more closely at those students and subgroups that might be more challenging for us to connect with. I want you to take a minute and think about how you get to know your students. Do you have any favorite techniques or strategies that you use, or a favorite get to know you activity in the classroom? Go ahead and jot down some of the things that you do. Right, we're going to do a partner share. So sometimes building relationships with students can be more challenging despite our best efforts. For example, I had a student who walked into my classroom as an incoming 9th grader and pretty much announced upon arrival that he didn't want to be there and that I should just leave him alone. And needless to say, building a relationship with this student was challenging. All of my usual get-to-know-you activities were a flop. Every day I made attempts to talk to him about non-school related things. I was trying to do Rick Smith's 2x10 strategy, and I wasn't making much progress. Every time I talked to him, I was greeted with silence. He was refusing to engage with me. So I was starting to feel a bit defeated, but I kept at it, and I finally wore him down. One day I asked him about the book he was reading, and he actually started talking to me about it, and this was the beginning of our relationship. It was a turning point for us. And so that's what we talked about for the next 2 weeks. I just talked to him about the book he was reading outside of school. And then one day he brought me a book that he had just finished and had asked me to read it, and so I did. And then that's when things really kind of took off for us. But it was really hard, and it took a good probably 6 weeks before we were at a point where we could then now even begin to talk about academics. So can you think of a time that you've ever had trouble getting to know or creating a positive relationship with a particular student, and what did you do? So Chapter 13 points out that students who were interviewed about their relationships with their teachers, there was a cluster of teacher traits that kept coming up as important. So our students want us to acknowledge them, value them, respect them, exhibit realness, demonstrate fairness, and be open to fun. Now, I'm not going to go into each one of these. I know that you read about them in preparation for today. But as teachers and as people who are interested in working with young adults, these are all traits that fairly come naturally to us. However, I think that within these traits, there are definitely areas that we need to be focusing on because we can do more, do better, and grow. So for example, I'm pretty good with demonstrating fairness and being open to fun. However, when I look at the trait of valuing students, one of the things that the Skillful Teacher says that's an aspect of valuing our students is that it's really important to be accessible to our students and involved beyond the classroom. This is an area that I really struggle with. Before I had my own kids, I was available after school. I was involved in their activities. But once I had my own children, I began to have this issue with trying to balance my home life and my school life, and my home life won. And so this is definitely an area that I know when I go back into the classroom, I need to be thinking about. I need to be finding more ways to connect with my students beyond my class period, and I need to find ways to be more accessible to them, maybe at brunch or lunch and after school. So another thing that we need to consider when thinking about building relationships is the fact that we're all individuals with different characteristics, interests, strengths, and challenges. I'm naturally more able to connect with some students, while connecting with others isn't so easy. It really requires more effort. Now, if you've done the Urban High School Leadership Program with Glenn Singleton or read anything by Linda Darling Hammond, then you're probably already familiar with the concept of otherness. Simply and in general, the less we have in common with our students in terms of gender, race, culture, ethnicity, or any other qualifier that makes us different, the harder it is to connect. So I want to stress that otherness can also be things like socioeconomic status, or maybe you have a hard time connecting to the goth kids or the jocks or the cheerleaders based on your own high school experiences. So last year, Kat spoke to the Skillful Teacher group about this segment, and I remember I was sitting in the back of the room, and as she was talking about a student subgroup that she struggled with, I was thinking about the students that I struggled to make connections with. And as she was talking, I remember kind of having this aha moment. I'd never really thought that there was a subgroup of students that I was challenged by until I really kind of sat down and thought deeply about it. And what I noticed was that the kids that were coming to mind and the names that I was writing down were all boys. And it had never occurred to me that I might have to try harder to get to know some of my boys. And I was looking at this list and I realized that all these boys had something in common. They were all my boys that were really quiet. And so what I realized is that it's easier for me to build relationships with and be connected to the students that are either behavior problems or the more boisterous kids in class. That's where my attention goes. And so this is something that I can now be aware of when I go back into the classroom, because I'm going to need to find ways, find strategies to make sure that all of the kids are on my radar and that I'm getting to know all of my students instead of just the ones that are getting my attention. So here's my challenge for you. I want you to think about which student subgroup or which teacher trait presents a challenge for you and why. So it's easy to think about the teacher traits, and if that's where you want to focus your efforts, that's fine. I've put all the page numbers up here. You're definitely going to want to go to the book. Each of these traits has multiple parts to them, and so by looking at those, you'll be able to pinpoint what exactly challenges you with this trait. But I do want to push you to think about student subgroups that you interact with and which subgroups you think might be challenging for you. Again, I know we all want to do right by our students, but we have to be honest with ourselves in the areas that we struggle, especially when it comes to building relationships with our students, because if we can name it and acknowledge it, then that's when we can start to get better. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes to kind of either do a quick write or just think about this, because then we're going to move to partner work. All right, before we move to partner work, I want to show you what's coming up after that for the share piece. So you're going to be introducing your partner and their challenge to your table group. So it's going to be really important that you're using and practicing your active listening skills. Now, active listening is a really important part of building relationships, and it's also one of the ways we can show our students that we value them. So I've put some reminders up here, and I'm sure you all noticed as you were reading the relationships chapter, the Skillful Teacher dedicates a good page or two to active listening because it is so essential in building relationships. So when we're actively listening, we're being attentive and we're not interrupting. We're acknowledging verbally and non-verbally what's being said. We're inquiring for details rather than making assumptions, and we're paraphrasing. So while you're practicing your active listening, please try really hard to just turn off all the voices that are in your head, all the distraction, and really focus in on your partner. I know it's easy to want to move right into giving advice or giving strategies or telling them about a time that you had something similar happen. But try and push all that aside. Just focus on listening. Seek to understand so that you can then share your partner's challenge with your table group. Okay, so we're going to split into partners. Go ahead and find an elbow partner at your table and then decide who's going to be partner A, who's going to be partner B. A's you're going to share first. Partner B, you're going to use and practice your active listening. In 3 minutes, I'm going to say switch, and then partner B, you're going to share, while partner A, you're going to practice your active listening. All right, so now that we've had a chance to talk about your challenges with your partner, I want you to problem solve by brainstorming strategies and moves within your table groups. So remember, you're going to be introducing your partner and sharing their challenges. And here are some stems that you can use. You don't have to, but they'll be up here. But please note the last stem. Do any of you have any ideas or strategies that he or she can try? This is really important because remember, the purpose of your table groups is to help you problem solve by brainstorming strategies. Okay? So now that you've had time to process individually, talk with a partner, and then brainstorm strategies as a table, we're now going to go back to individual processing and reflection by applying the elements of effective effort to our teaching practice. So with your table groups, you got some strategies, but that's only one part of effective effort. I want you to spend some time thinking about the other aspects of effective effort. So I'm going to pass out an effective effort checklist so that you can measure your own efforts regarding the subgroup you find challenging or the teacher trait that you want to build. The checklist will help you isolate ways to focus your efforts so that you can get better. I'm going to check in about 10 minutes. All right, so we're going to transition now to watching strong positive connections with students in action. I'm going to watch a video clip of a teacher having a hallway conversation prior to the bell. This teacher's already established relationships with his students, but I want you to look and see how he strengthens these relationships as he simultaneously sends the high expectation messages. So the video is going to be a little bit shaky, so it's really important that you're focusing in to listening to what the teacher's saying to his students.
You've got the power to be influenced like the entire class positively, or the other way.
My teachers always tell me that.
Well, do you believe it or no? Okay. So that's what I really want to see from you today. You got the power. And it would be a shame. See, this is the thing. You're doing great in this class. You're getting great grades. You seem to be understanding the stuff because you focus for like 3 minutes, then you get it. That's not the case for everybody. So you could really use your influence, your personality, how people respect you to really make this a great class for a lot more people. Cool? Excellent. I look forward to it. So we're going to be working today a little bit more focusing, right?
Yeah.
Great.
Super
Excellent.
focused.
Looking forward to it. Good work. So Latoya, so remember, I want you to keep your group on task today. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying by that?
Yeah.
You got to be out. You got to help out. If you come be back before the bell.
I got my paper.
Yeah. So remember what we talked about yesterday? So and I know you're not doing it wrong. She might be interpreting a little bit like, where's this coming from? She just got to be aware of, hey, how are you doing? Great. Just be aware of how they might be interpreted. All right. I think you guys are gonna have a great day. I think you're gonna have a great day.
You late.
Welcome. How are you doing? Great.
Okay, so go ahead and turn to your table group and talk about how does this teacher leverage his strong positive relationships with students to send the high expectation messages. All right, and the final question I have for you, actually you have a choice. We're going to do a quick partner share, maybe 2 minutes, so it'll be really quick. What had to happen before this clip so that he's comfortable having these hallway conversations? Or you can talk to your partner about how you connect with students prior to the bell. Okay, I want to leave you with this quote as we go into our break.